This is Andy Purewal, Boxing Social, in association with Betfred. We're in Las Vegas, and I'm joined by Matchroom's Frank Smith. Frank, how are you?
I'm good, mate. Really enjoying my time in Las Vegas. Had a good week in New York and here, and then homeward bound on Sunday.
Big couple of weeks stretch, obviously a week in between before that Buatsi fight on May 21st as well. We're here, Canelo returns to a Matchroom show, to a DAZN show. This test with Bivol, for you, Frank, where does it rank in Canelo's career so far?
In Canelo's career, I couldn't even answer that question, I'll be honest with you, because he's had so many fights. But I would say a lot of people are sleeping on Bivol's talent and what he's done. I think Dimitri is going to bring a lot of challenges for Canelo. At the same time, Canelo is the pound for pound #1 star in the sport right now. So they've obviously both got a lot of strengths. I think Dimitri needed this type of fight to really get up for it. People who have watched his last few fights, maybe he hasn't quite had the same buzz for him going into those fights, and this is what he's been waiting a long time for. Been talking to Vadim, and who's his manager in the world of boxing, and the team for a while now to try and make this fight and get it over the line. And I'm glad we got it done, because it's a great fight, and I think people are going to be shocked on Saturday about the quality of the fight, because a lot of people are writing Bivol off, maybe because they don't know enough about him.
You're actually now Dimitri Bivol's promoter, according to the team up on stage, so I imagine you've got to try and push for him to win this fight now.
I'm on 10%, he said, and I went back and saw him afterwards. But yeah, no, I've known Dimitri and Vadim and all the guys for a long time now. It must be like 5 or 6 years, and they're a pleasure to deal with. They're a great team to deal with, they're great people as well. So we've got a great relationship, and I think the joke is more around, obviously everyone knows Canelo and Eddie's relationship because they make it quite public. So I think the joke is more Eddie's team Canelo and I'm team Bivol.
So if Bivol wins, I imagine you're going to be leading the after party.
I'll be in the corner. I'll be jumping in the corner. Eddie will be over there. We have separate corners. Maybe we should start doing that moving forward. Maybe Buatsi Richards, we should do it.
Well, one in one corner,
one in the other. Yeah.
So what, we've got to film, so you're going to have one person being filmed in one corner and one in the other, and whoever has the devastating reaction, basically.
Yeah, or like press conference. I'll sit next to Eddie. Whoever will flip a coin for who gets who.
Could do, Frank. Frank, one thing people speak about is the natural weight difference. Obviously, Canelo's not looked at as a big super middleweight, never mind a lot heavyweight, but people nobody's really picked up on, and I only thought about it earlier, is with Bivol, he's spoken in the past about he could have, whether he'd been comfortable or not, dropped to super middle. How big of a weight difference do you think it will be come fight night?
Yeah, Bivol's not a massive light heavyweight, like you say, and he probably could. But maybe it's a bit late now, but maybe a year or two ago in his career he could have got down to 168. I think the focus always was, though, that from Canelo's perspective, he wants to go up, and he did. I think even with the check weights, he used to do sometimes like 10. He wants to do things to not put any obstacles in the way for people to say, well, you did that and you stopped your opponent from putting on weight. Like, he's going in there with Dimitri Bivol at 175, and Dimitri Bivol will put on whatever weight he wants to put on, because he wants the respect of saying, no, you went in there and you did it. I think in terms of on the night, is there going to be a huge size difference? Canelo is we've seen him before, he's a beast, isn't he? He's a lump, although not huge, he's quite a lump, and I don't think Bivol's looking quite slender, I think, from seeing him this week. But it'll be interesting to see on the night. We've seen Canelo go up to 175 once before against Sergey Kovalev, and we saw what he did to him, so he'll be believing he can do the same thing again.
Listening to you talk there, Frank, would I be right in saying there isn't any form of kind of a rehydration clause there?
Yeah, correct.
Perfect. Just moving away from that, I just want to touch on the DAZN pay-per-view launch, obviously first one here in America, not in the UK. What are you guys expecting to see DAZN do pay-per-view wise, especially when you compare it to, say, the Canelo Plant fight, which had previously taken place on Showtime?
Yeah, look, DAZN have always got strong numbers that they've been hitting on previous fights. Obviously, first pay-per-view event they've done here, and we're really the build-up's been great. They've got some great activation partnerships in the build-up to this, and I think we're going to do really strong numbers. Canelo always does. Yep. I think he's had something like 12 pay-per-view fights. Something like that, 12 pay-per-view fights. So he's the only big pay-per-view star, in a big pay-per-view star in the US, I'd say, right now. Others can be in relevant fights, But Canelo, I think, could be pay-per-view against anyone. He's got such a huge following. It's good because it gives DAZN the ability, as we said before, to be in the market for these biggest fights. Because it's very difficult to compete with when Showtime or ESPN or someone's doing a pay-per-view at $80 and you're a $20 subscription service. You need this option to be able to compete ultimately.
I'm interested to know, Frank, obviously you worked closely with Jake Paul last week. He was brought up to Canelo yesterday. Now, don't get me wrong, I know Canelo's going to want to achieve more great things within the sport, and I'm sure Jake Paul's on the bottom of that list. But one quote he came away with is maybe in a couple of years' time. Would you guys be up for potentially making a Canelo and Jake Paul fight? And numbers-wise, how big could that fight be?
It'd be massive, wouldn't it? It'd be huge. Because it's bringing together two different audiences as well. I think it heavily depends on, does Jake Paul make it 2 years undefeated? Who knows? But I think Canelo's got his eyes set on breaking records, doing things in the sport of boxing that people will look back on and go, oh my goodness, did you see what he did there? Beating Jake Paul will not be one of those moments. So right now in his career, it doesn't really make sense. Maybe in 2 or 3 years, once he's become undisputed at 175, gone up and become undisputed at cruiserweight and then done it at bridgerweight and then done it at heavyweight. Maybe at that point he goes, you know what, now we'll give it a go against Jake Paul, because there's not much else I can do in this sport. But let's see. Crazier things have happened in this sport, haven't they?
Well, with Jake, just to stick with before we move on, Tony Bellew. Jake Paul didn't seem to quite know who the bomber was. What were your thoughts on that little kind of interaction last week?
They're all friendly now. They bumped into each other at the back, and Jake Paul just apparently went with respect. So I think he realised he didn't want to tear up with him.
So that fight's off the card there.
Yeah, I think it'd be great. I think it'd be very close in the early rounds. Tony's getting a bit old now, but I'm only winding him up. But I don't think Jake Paul should get in the ring with Tony Bellew, if I'm honest. I think he should steer clear of that and just stick to fighting some former UFC fighters.
Do you think, away joking aside and away from
that was
Canelo,
only a joke. It was all banter,
away from the Canelos or Tony Bellews in the world, do you think you will ever promote a Jake Paul fight again?
Jake Paul's obviously got his own promotional company, hasn't he? He's got MVP now, so his goal is to promote his own fights. Again, we promoted his first fight against Anderson Gibb. He's obviously taken it very seriously. He's not just in the sport of boxing to make a few quid and get out. I think he actually wants to do it, and there should be no reason why he shouldn't be allowed to do that. So let's see. Maybe in a couple of years he'll fight one of our other guys. Once he's shown that he can. Maybe when he wins the world title. Do you think he can win a world title?
Moving on,
you
Frank.
Always sit on the fence.
Well, I don't know. Well, I mean, I don't think that needs to be answered. I think that's quite clear for most to see. Yeah.
Anything's possible. Like, we've promoted him before, we've promoted Logan before, but I think our focus is on real boxing, and if he carries on to do what he's doing, then anything could happen. But we have to wait and see.
All the more for Jake if he manages to achieve that feat. But moving away from him and just going back to Canelo, the Alexander Usyk talk again earlier this week. Do you think we could ever see Canelo and Usyk, whether it be at cruiser or about 1 pound over the cruiser limit? Do you think we will ever see those two in the ring together?
I think Canelo would do it. I'm not saying Usyk wouldn't do it, but Usyk's obviously got his focus now on AJ, and AJ's going to go and do a job with him again. Well, this time round, but maybe that's possible. Would Usyk go back down to? I can't remember what he weighed in the first AJ fight.
221.
Maybe it depends on how long he stays at heavyweight. If it's 3 years down the line and he fights Canelo, does he want to go back down to making weight at 201 pounds? It's very different, isn't it? Once you get used to being able to weigh in at 220, like not having to make weight. Obviously, look, he's training all the time, but he's not having to make a set weight. But let's see what happens. Canelo's first focus, I'm sure, is he's got to go in there, try and win the 175 title again. Then we'll know what's penned in for later this year. Then after that, does he go and try and become undisputed at 175? Then after that, does he go for the cruiserweights? He's spoken about fighting Makabu. There's loads of options for him. And he's never going to shy away from a challenge.
After Golovkin, Frank, are there any fights out there which you believe would be makeable for Canelo at 168, which are big enough to entice him to stick at that weight, or do you think he's going to be wanting to move up to 175?
I think it a little bit depends. I think there's always going to be fights there. It depends on what drives him, doesn't it? If it's fight a name and get a good payday, there's always going to be names that are worthwhile fighting. But is he then driven? Like, I think he's more driven by creating moments where people go, and then he went to 175 and he beat, the reigning champion there, and then he went and unified, became undisputed in the division, and then he went and fought McCarthy. That's, in my opinion, I'm not saying that's what he will do, but in my eyes, that's what I get from him. He wants to create legacy and moments where people will look back and go, did you see that run he went on? And that isn't always about just fighting a big name for a payday. Because he could fight Jake Paul, couldn't he? He could just fight Jake Paul here. So imagine how much money he could fight Jake Paul here next month, and they'd approve,
I mean, Frank, if there's any chance to fight Jake Paul, I'll get in on that. I'll take the money. I'll take the beating.
Would you fight Jake Paul?
For those figures, I'll do it. I'll do that. Yeah.
I don't think you've got quite as much draw as Canelo yet. Give it time.
Give it time, yeah. Give me 6 months, Frank. Yeah, I'll get to work on that. I also want to get your thoughts on Tom Brown's comments about the offer that they made to Canelo of Vicharlo and then Spence fight up at 164 as a catch weight. What did you make of that when that came out earlier this week?
Again, I think it goes back to the point of Canelo accomplishing things. Like, to go up to 175 again and beat a reigning world champion means more to him than fighting Errol Spence at 164 pounds, who's coming up 17 pounds. In my, again, if you were saying to me, what means more? Well, you got a guy coming up 17 pounds here. People would just go, well, he's too small for you anyway. So, again, it just comes down to, if it's just a money discussion, there's lots of fighters out there that he could take. But if it's a legacy decision, then those sort of fights don't make sense.
Moving away from that, as we did touch on Usyk earlier, what is the latest with the Anthony Joshua rematch?
I feel like a broken record, but we're in a very good place, and I would hope by next week. It's obviously the fight's there, and it's done. That's the fight we're doing. It's just a case of the granular, small details we're getting through now, and next week I feel very confident we will be in a very good place with it.
As a team, have you locked in a location? Don't you tell me? Well, I mean, I'd like you to tell me where, but have you guys kind of got it set as to where that will take place?
I mean, we've all accepted, and now it's the point of going through those minor details to get. It's a lot of work putting on an event of this scale. So I'd love it. It'd make my job very easy if everything took a couple of days. But putting shows on of this size takes a lot of effort and work, and a lot of people involved. So that's the bit we're going through now. But we all accepted what the route is. Now it's just about getting the final details sorted.
Tyson Fury retiring, Frank, and since then we've seen the WBC come out saying they're going to be seeking answers as to kind of what he wants to do, whether he's going to vacate his title or what have you. Just want to get your thoughts on that.
I think he will retire if Alexander Usyk wins the rematch. And I don't think he'll retire if Anthony Joshua does. Because it comes back to the thing. I think with the AJ fight, there's something there inside him that's like, I want to prove to everyone I'm the best heavyweight. Don't get me wrong, he's number one heavyweight now. But it's been going on for so long. Those discussions and that sort of, not even hate, but that sort of back and forth. So I think if AJ wins, he doesn't retire, and if Usyk wins, he retires. That's my opinion.
What will be the plan with Dillian White moving forwards, Frank?
Dillian White, hopefully we can get, we've worked with him in 15, 16 of his last fights. We've had a great relationship with him. Hopefully we can do something moving forward with him. He's still in the top 5 heavyweights in the world. There's still major fights out there for him. And this is like a big, when you think about it, in all these fights, for all these people, win, lose or draw, you look at all potential fights out there, like Wilder against White's a massive fight, AJ against Wilder's massive, AJ against Dillian White's massive, AJ against Fury's massive, Fury against Wilder again, people would still, I'm sure people would still, so there's so many fights to be made there. I think, there's lots of exciting nights still to come in the heavyweight division.
I suppose, Eddie, about kind of the relationships that he has with the other promoters, i.e. the lack of one, shall we say, with the PBC guys. Things can be a little strained at times with Bob Arum, shall we say. Obviously Frank Warren in amongst that as well. But he said he doesn't kind of pander to anyone. He'll continue to go along his own path. will that not be at the detriment of trying to make those fighters? So, for example, Deontay Wilder, PBC fighter, how much people would still love to see the Anthony Joshua fight at some point, or the Dillian White fight? Granted, Dillian's a free agent, but you guys have worked with him for so long. Will that not just affect it and make it even more less likely to ever see those fights take place?
Yeah, but I don't think it's our side being like. If you ask anyone we've co-promoted a show with over the years and events we put on, I would say we're one of the easiest groups of people to deal with. And all we want to do is put on a great night, make the fighters as much money as possible, and do good for the sport of boxing. Unfortunately, we're competitors. Like, we're all competitors, so we all have our own goals and paths we're going down. And we're never going to be working together day in, day out. But we all get on. But certain people within all the different companies, we all have relationships with each other. It's not like we're sitting there, we hate each other. But at the same time, everyone's got to do what's right for their business, their fighters. So I don't see why fights like Wilder against White or Wilder against AJ shouldn't happen. If it makes sense for everyone and it makes sense for the fighters, then the little details. It's always, people a lot of the time find reasons not to do something. We just want to do good business and do good for the sport. So, I think it's spoken about too much. We're never going to be like best friends going on picnics together, are we? Because it's just not. It's never going to happen.
What a picnic that would be? Imagine you, Eddie, Bob Arum, Al Heyman coming out as well. Be some party there.
Who'd bring the cakes?
Well, I mean, you've been called Eddie's T-boy previously, so.
Look, I am the T-boy, as we all know, so I might not even get invited. I might have to serve the tea for everyone at that one, but look, I think ultimately Eddie is quite open that not everyone loves Eddie, but it's just a lot of it's a show.
How do you go about, I don't want to say mending those relationships, but building them back up or getting them on good terms?
The only reason I don't like it sometimes is because he says things that, it's all like, he's a promoter.
Yeah.
So like, don't take everything seriously. You know what I mean? I think everyone's too soft, and takes it personally. It's like, you sit down and have a chat with him, completely normal. So it's just a balance between the two. It's not about mending relationships. He hasn't done anything to anyone to offend them, upset. It's just, I've said something to you in an interview. So like, ultimately, people need to grow up a little, I'd say, in certain aspects.
Right, Frank, we'll leave that there now. I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of your evening. You got much planned?
I've got dinner tonight, and then a nice early night. Do you know what? I haven't stayed up past 10:45 in Vegas.
Can't do it in Vegas right now, Frank. Cinco de Mayo as well.
I'm not the same person I used to be. I'm getting boring. But Saturday night, if my man Bivol wins, then he'll be crying, and I'll be out of the after party, won't I?
Frank, I appreciate your time as always. Thank you for speaking to me.
Cheers, mate. Good to see you.